In this video, I'm going to share some of the useful things that we discovered when we recently visited Venice, and hopefully this will make your trip to Venice that bit easier. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, then stick around. The first one is possibly the most obvious, and if you didn't already know, Venice is a very popular destination, and I would say it's probably always busy. However, there are certain times of the year it gets even more busy. And so choosing the right time to visit Venice is important. We visited during September, so the scenes you can see here on screen are for a September visit. The carnival season runs in Venice February, March. This is a very busy time to visit. I think in Venice the permanent population is around about 50,000. That number doubles most days with tourists coming into the city. So it's something to bear in mind, and I do show this in some of my other content I have on my channel relating to Venice. And that is, if you're actually staying in Venice itself, then it's useful to come back to some of the venues, the popular venues, during the evening and during the night time when a lot of people have gone back to wherever they're staying, for example in Mestre, and it's significantly quieter. So it's something to bear in mind. One thing you'll often hear mentioned in relation to Venice is the flooding. Obviously, Venice is no different to anywhere else in the world. We have high tide and low tide. So here you can see the high tide in San Marco, and obviously the water level has come up through the ground. It's nothing significant. However, just be aware, the real high tides, the risk of the real high tides, or it's acqua alta as it's known, are during the autumn and winter. So particularly during November and December, there is a much higher risk of flooding due to high tides. But you will see something like this even in a regular high tide, because that's just the nature of the city that's built on the water. Now, flooding isn't something that's new to the residents of Venice, so they are quite well prepared. And you will see, for example, here in San Marco in front of the Basilica, these temporary walkways that they've put in place which allow you to keep your feet dry effectively. And it's not just in sort of frequent sort of flooding areas like San Marco. This was one of the streets, for example, in the Jewish quarter. So they are well prepared if they do have some flooding. Another thing to bear in mind, there are around 400 bridges in Venice and numerous narrow streets. It's highly likely that you'll have to negotiate some of these from your drop-off point to get to your accommodation. So this is definitely something to bear in mind when you're selecting and packing your luggage ahead of your trip. You may well splash out and take one of these lovely private water taxis from the airport to Venice when you arrive. However, that's quite an expensive way to move around the city once you've arrived. It's more than likely that you'll use effectively the water bus service, the public service, the Vaperetto. I do have another video that shows the different methods of getting from Venice Airport to the city of Venice, so if you click the link above, you can watch that video. We really enjoyed using the Vaperetto. Just bear in mind, just like any city, they do have rush hour, and effectively these are the buses of Venice, so they can become very busy during certain times of the day. We found the Vaperetto easy to use, easy to navigate. At each of the water bus stops, you'll see this sign that shows the different lines. Different lines have different numbers. Some of the lines go along the main canal, the Grand Canal. Some of them circumvent the city. Some go to Barano. So lots of options when choosing the Vaperetto as your transport. Also at the water bus stops, you'll have the digital display that tells you when the next boat is arriving. There's lots of information to guide you in what door to stand at, so you can see A, B, C, D, etc. So you can see there's different locations to stand, because obviously the boat pulls up and there's people who need to get off, and there's a different entry for getting on quite often. So really straightforward, lots of good information, and like I say, we picked it up very quickly indeed. No issues using the Vaperetto. Getting your tickets really easy again. You'll find these machines. You can buy your ticket, you can collect a ticket you've already purchased online, and then you have options to buy tickets for the water bus to and from the airport. You could just the Vaperetto service to move around Venice, and actually tickets as well for the sort of road bus. So for us, the most convenient ticket was the 3-day ticket, which was what we purchased, and you can see the cost here is €45 per person. You can pay for your tickets using card or cash. Once you have your tickets, you don't have to validate immediately, but the first time you use the Vaperetto, you must validate it, and thereafter, each and every time you use the Vaperetto, you must tap this small machine you'll see at every bus stop. You just tap it before you board. Be aware, some of the bus stops have turnstiles that won't open until you actually validate your ticket. We were actually staying in Venice, so what we did, we took a tour along the Grand Canal at night time, and as you can see here, a view from the Grand Canal looking back to San Marco. It just gives you a different view of the city at night, and we just thought the Vaperetto was a relatively cheap and easy way to tour the city, if you like, at night, and as you can see here, yeah, it was definitely well worth it. I do also have a longer video on the best viewpoints in Venice, and the link is above if you'd like to view that one. Sadly, any city that has a large gathering of tourists often attracts pickpockets. So it's not something that we were really aware of when we were in Venice. Apart from the signs, you'll see signs, for example, in the Vaperetto, beware of pickpockets, because this is an area where certain times of day, as I've said, you really are jam-packed into the Vaperetto. So it's just about being aware of your belongings, things like if you can put your phone in a lanyard or a wrist strap or something like that. Just be aware of your belongings, certainly in the busy areas. Something else to be aware of are these bad guys, and that is the mosquito. During the warmer summer months, and indeed we were aware of them during September, they are around, so the usual insect repellent, try and keep your windows closed at night if possible. Just prevention is always better than cure when it comes to mosquitoes. Venice is a car-free area. They do allow road taxis and buses into a very small part of Venice. However, most of the travelling you'll do will be on foot. So be prepared for lots of walking. Bring the appropriate footwear if you want to avoid these type of injuries. The next two relate, unfortunately, to taxes you have to pay when you visit Venice. The first one is the tourist tax. This ranges from €1 to €5 per day for your first 5 consecutive nights in a hotel or non-hotel accommodation such as Airbnb. To find out more information, I'd recommend going onto the official tourism website for City of Venice, and you'll click on the tourist tax information tab, and you'll see the information which for example, children under 10 and people with disabilities don't pay the tax, and then from 10 until 16 years they pay 50% tax, and like I say, it also varies depending on the season. So I will post a link in the description below to the official tourism website. So that was the tourist tax for people staying actually in the city of Venice. For people just taking a day trip to and from the city of Venice, for example, you may be staying in Mestre, you also have to pay a tax, which is the visitor tax. This is €5 per day, and you can see information here on the website. It's for 54 days during 2025. I will put a link to this website in the description below. So like I say, it's €5 per day, under 14s are free, and you must pay the tax for at least 4 days before you visit. If you don't, then the charge increases from €5 to €10. Both the tourist tax website and the visitor tax website give really good, clear information in terms of how much you have to pay and when, depending on the time of year you visit. So I'd highly recommend click the description below, it links in the description below, and just make sure you're prepared ahead of your visit. And the final thing is where to stay in Venice. You could choose to stay in Venice around the area of San Marco. Just bear in mind, although you will be very close to some of the main attractions, eating here will be more expensive, the accommodation will be more expensive, and remember, Venice is very walkable. So for example, we stayed in a slightly quieter area, Cannaregio area, and it was literally a 14-minute walk from our accommodation to San Marco. So here you can see the type of sort of quiet side canals, quiet streets. Another quieter area is Dorsoduro. So these areas, they like I say, we stayed in Cannaregio and we found the food quality was excellent, but everything was just less expensive. So it's a trade-off between being more central, paying a bit more, or being a sort of 10-15 minute walk, but less expensive. Hopefully you've found the video useful and you've enjoyed it. If you have, please consider hitting a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any future content. I would also recommend watching some of the other videos I mentioned, such as getting from the airport into the city of Venice, and also some of the Venice viewpoints and the top things to do in Venice. So I do have a playlist that will show at the end of this video, so please feel free to watch some of those videos. Thanks for watching.